sucked forcefully into a 7-6 centimeter underwater pipeline at immense speed, 5 men found themselves in an unimaginable waking nightmare. Only one would live to tell the tale, and a GoPro camera mounted on one of the divers recorded the exact moment disaster struck, revealing not just the horror, but a shocking story of alleged negligence. On the 25th of February 2022, at the Berth 6 platform in Pointe-à-Pierre, Trinidad and Tobago, a team from LMCS, comprising Faisal Kurban, Kazim Ali Jr., Rishi Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boodram, was tasked with maintenance work on a dormant pipeline belonging to Paria Fuel Company, a government-owned oil entity. The pipeline in question was a 7-6 centimeter U-shaped line running along the seabed designed to transport oil from Berth 6, where ships unload, to Berth 5, the refinery. While the work carried inherent risks, the 5-person diving team consisted of well-prepared and experienced professionals. They utilized a diving bell, a unique habitat shaped like a 2.44 meter cube, which provided a dry workspace. The team positioned the structure over the pipe at Berth 6 to displace the water within the work area, creating a pressure pocket of air that forced out the ocean water. This innovative setup allowed the crew to remove their diving gear and safely use their tools to perform their essential tasks. Undoubtedly, they had completed this procedure hundreds of times before. As the 5 veteran divers performed their duties, it was business as usual, until it wasn't. 2 weeks prior, an inflatable plug had been installed to protect the pipe's oil and prevent contamination. The line was not in service then, though it could be activated if needed. This industry practice, known as dead legs, is not without its risks. While dead legs is a standard procedure, it demands intense planning, a thorough process hazard risk assessment, and close monitoring. Preparing for maintenance jobs like this can take days, if not longer, through meticulous planning and discussions. Unfortunately, this critical preparation was likely overlooked, suggesting the oil company was unwilling to adequately prepare for a safe operation. Yet, like most employees, the 5 divers were simply following orders, descending to their work site, unaware of the hidden danger. Inflatable plugs like this are pressurized, holding back the high-pressure air in the diving bell and the low-pressure air within the pipe itself, a setup that created the perfect formula for disaster. The 5 divers had no warning. The moment Ali Jr. handed a wrench to his crewmates in the diving bell, and they began loosening the valve to release the plug, the pressure difference transformed the pipe's interior into a relentless vortex. It ruthlessly sucked in air, water, people, and equipment into its depths. The power of the suction was overwhelming, and a torrent of water surged into the diving bell, instantly turning their sanctuary into a death trap. The sudden influx of water and the pressure differential unleashed a force that yanked the men and their tools into the narrow pipeline. In the blink of an eye, they found themselves hurtling violently through a whirlpool of water and oil for an agonizing 90 seconds, desperately fighting for oxygen. Suddenly, they came to a stop. They gathered themselves, assessing their positions in the pipe, and the true gravity of their situation became terrifyingly clear. The violent tornado of water, air, and oil had left them settled somewhere in the line where, by a stroke of cruel luck, an air pocket allowed them to breathe. The sole survivor, Christopher Boodram, would later vividly recount the horrifying ordeal. Their struggle for survival had only just begun. The men were trapped inside a 366-meter-long oil pipe, disoriented, injured, and in absolute terror. Amidst this chaos and fear, they tried to communicate and keep each other's spirits up. However, the grim reality of their situation quickly crushed any hope of easy survival. The GoPro camera that had accompanied them for the dive recorded every second of their plight, capturing the sheer terror and the desperate sounds of their struggle for life. Chris initially believed they had been hurled through the pipe head first, meaning they would have to crawl backward to exit. But Kazim, Yusuf, and Fizal were certain they had gone in feet first. Trusting the judgment of the majority, Chris, as the least injured diver, placed his feet on Kazim's shoulders. He then instructed Kazim to pull the rest of the group together and directed Faisal, who was at the back, to push everyone. Linked together as a human chain, with Chris in front, they began their arduous attempt to make their way out of the pipe. Squeezing their way through thick, slippery oil residue and pitch-black darkness was unbearable. They grappled with broken bones, burning eyes, a searing throat, and extreme discomfort, all of which weighed them down. Their progress was excruciatingly slow, and the end was nowhere in sight. The men kept praying and moving to the best of their abilities. Eventually, they stumbled upon 2 oxygen tanks with their regulators still attached. Chris informed the men that breathing the air inside the pipe could make them delirious and nauseous, advising them to take small sips from the tank at intervals to maintain clear oxygen in their systems. Although they found oxygen tanks, water levels continued to rise as they progressed. Christopher noticed that some group members were struggling to breathe and suffering from various injuries, while others were blocked and unable to move. He decided to check how much the water would rise if they continued. Moving forward, Chris made a horrifying discovery. The next segment of the pipe was entirely underwater. With just 2 oxygen tanks for 5 individuals, it was not safe to proceed any further as a group. Chris knew that if they attempted to go through together, panic would ensue, and they could potentially kill each other in the process. Knowing this, Chris had to make the hardest decision of his life. He had to continue alone to get help for everyone. Chris prepared himself to deliver the devastating news. After he explained the situation to them, they reluctantly agreed it was their only chance and gave Chris one of the oxygen tanks. Chris promised that he would get help and return for them. Kazim, however, begged Chris to stay with them, and even after agreeing, could not let go of Chris's foot. Chris was forced to pull and yank his foot free from Kazim's grip and left them behind. Still not entirely sure if he was going in the right direction, and uncertain how much air he had left in the tank, he swam through the submerged section with the tank held in front of him, desperately hoping he would find another air pocket soon. The entire pipe contained flooded sections, some interspersed with air pockets. After fighting to make his way underwater, he realized his oxygen was running out based on the deteriorating quality of the air. With his diving instincts in overdrive, he breathed the last air in his tank. As if fate intervened, his tank then collided with another metal object before him. It was another oxygen tank. He quickly scrambled in the pitch-black darkness to find the new tank's regulator. After fumbling, he finally located it, but the regulator had no mouthpiece. He pushed the entire thing into his mouth, which instantly filled with an oily sludge, like drinking expired motor oil from an old car. He managed to take a relieved breath from the tank, but he knew he couldn't stop. He continued with all his strength, uncertain how long he could survive. Worse still, how much time did his brothers have, and were they faring any better than when he had left them? As he clambered through the pipe, he finally entered another air pocket. Yet, instinctively, he knew his only escape was to return to the riser. He was determined, but did not know how much more he could endure in this dangerous place with no light, no sense of direction, no room to move, and a dwindling air supply. His eyes and throat burning, his body sore. Christopher clawed his way through the slick, watery pipeline. Unfortunately, this section of the pipe was half filled with water. He found yet another air tank and reached the last flooded section before the riser. At this point, he heard Faisal calling out his name. He had been following Chris. Faisal asked Chris to wait before he entered the last flooded section. But Chris told him he couldn't wait any longer, that they had been in the pipe too long and that their time was running out. They briefly discussed the likelihood that they were heading towards berth 6. Chris had to move on without Faisal. After ensuring Faisal had an oxygen tank, Chris had no option but to re-enter the water. He continued until he found the bend in the pipe that he hoped would lead to salvation. After what seemed like hours, this next decision would determine his fate. This was the moment of truth. Either this was berth 5, which was sealed off by a plug, or this was berth 6, where they had originated. As he made up his mind for the third time to die, with one last push of determination, he kicked off towards the riser. As Chris continued to swim, he realized how utterly exhausted he was, but he was determined to make it out and save his crew. With oil burning his eyes and lungs, and fatigue making his body heavy, Chris eventually reached the top of the pipe. Though he survived the ordeal, it wasn't over yet. As Christopher recounted the situation to the medical care staff, he detailed as many specifics as possible about the men and their positions. Unfortunately, the rest of the LMCS team found Christopher's story hard to believe. The company assumed that the pipeline was full of oil and that any oxygen tanks the men had would provide only about an hour of air each. Rescue divers from the LMCS team dove down and knocked on the pipe, attempting to locate the trapped men. They received the satisfying sounds of someone knocking back, undoubtedly providing the men inside a fleeting sense of hope. But the LMCS team had yet to devise a way to extract them. As the hours ticked by, the 4 injured divers suffered through their injuries, dealing with dwindling air, a suffocating curtain of oil fumes, rising seawater, and accumulating carbon dioxide. Though it seemed that Paria Trading Company and LMCS would initially save the 4 men, a rescue never came. The 4 men realized no rescue was coming, intensifying their horror. The company pulled the 4 remaining bodies days after the incident began. Autopsies were performed, but no one could agree on when each man died. Officials decided they survived until Saturday, but some speculated that one endured until Monday. Officials eventually launched a commission of inquiry in Trinidad and Tobago to investigate the circumstances that led to the Paria diving tragedy, where Christopher Boodram appeared before the commission to testify about his harrowing experience, recounting the gut-wrenching events.